so great to see you guys. Thanks for taking a little time out at the fair to talk about our young people. I'm so excited. So I am Susan Cunningham. I'm one of the Arlington County board members. I've been there about 2 years. I've got 2 teenagers as well, so in the midst of those teenage years. And I would just love to hear, what you think is working well and not working well for supporting our young people and mental health through middle school, high school, and on into adulthood from the county perspective. So libraries and recreation and spaces outside and that sort of thing.
I think we're actually excelling in that part. I know there's so many programs outside of school, whether it be libraries or recreational, like playing basketball. There's so many spaces for teens to be able to have that time to, connect with friends in an ambient that's not really educational. So yeah, I would really commend you guys on that. That's pretty good. One thing I think that I really wanted to talk about was like the cultural aspect of it. When it comes to especially I'm talking from like a Latino perspective, there's sometimes different ways that our parents can handle mental health. So I think maybe offering programs for parents, specifically like in the Hispanic Latino community, to be able to, become more aware, receptive to that, and know how to talk their teen through that would be an amazing addition.
Yeah, that's great. We have a limited program, I think, that's like kind of an on-call parenting coach that's almost like, a bug in your ear, but we all need that. I mean, I grew up here, but my teens are facing things that are different, and so I still need a little support as well. And so, the county does offer some parenting supports as well as programming and, actually direct service for families and for kids. But sometimes it's hard to find those, or to realize, especially if you didn't grow up in a space that had those kinds of programs, you wouldn't even think to look for them sometimes. And so that's where we really look to our community partners and our schools and our housing providers and churches and mosques and everyone else to kind of help make those connections so that a neighbor or a friend can say, hey, I had this really positive experience. Why don't you try giving a call over there? But do you want to say a little bit about from the nonprofit side what you're seeing?
I am the Chief Executive Officer for the Center for Youth and Family Advocacy. So one of the things that we do and what our mission is to transform the system, right? And to create sustainable community conditions so that kids and families can thrive in safe and healthy neighborhoods. So that's a mouthful, but basically what we're trying to say is we want to be able to create that dream village, right, where neighbors are taking care of neighbors. And so one of the things that we did in the city of Danville, which is in southwestern Virginia, is we created a plan called the Children and Youth Master Plan. And in that plan, the places that we went and did listening sessions with kids, we saw places where kids felt like they were not supported in places like finding their purpose, right? And mental health spaces. And it's interesting because now Arlington is kicking off the same type of process. And the same categories are coming up as the big ones, the places where focus groups are saying, we think Arlington needs to do more in these particular areas. And I think it comes unsurprisingly that those 2 categories have lifted to the kind of top of the list. And so I think about really how our community, and when I say community, I really do mean each individual person, all of your peers, the nonprofit partners, the county agencies. How do you feel in your viewpoint that we're working together? Or does it enter your mind as like, okay, these 2 places are working together for my benefit? Or does it sometimes feel like I have to choose this way or this way? I can't go to a place that they can give me the best product together.
So adding a little bit of my experience into that, I work for Edu Futuro as an AmeriCorps member. And I know, the county and nonprofits, they go hand in hand. So sometimes it'll be like the county will request us an Edu Futuro program at a specific school or, encourage us to go to different events. And I think, in my experience, it has been really hand in hand. It hasn't really been so much of, I'm going to choose this or this one. And I think it's so good that, especially Arlington is so good at collaborating with nonprofits, and there's so many opportunities. I know I was looking through the website for like mental health resources. There was a big list of different options available for us, which I think if I was a teen in need, that would have been one of the greatest things and resources I could have asked for. So
yeah, and I think that has really been amped up in the last 5 years in response to the fentanyl epidemic, in response to kind of the COVID isolation that all of us felt, and how that came out differently in different families and communities. And so I think we saw that need, and we've been trying a couple different things and throwing a lot at it to hopefully have the right mix of things for folks, whether it's programming or just a space to hang out. Like our libraries do amazing work just by like being there, you know, and not being like, how are you? What's going on? Right?
What can I get you?
Yeah. It's just like, hey. And you know, rec centers as well. But working with schools, we put providers into the schools at the high school level, and I think now at the middle school level. But also making space where you could do a telehealth appointment, because it's kind of hard to do that when you're stuck at home with other people listening through the walls, right? Or just to dial in and find a counselor rather than having to like go navigate health insurance and that sort of thing. So I do think we've made progress there, you know, but it's like each generation, each age of kids is going to have a different mix of things that work and things that don't work. And I think for me, I worry about the kids who are just a little bit less connected, you know, so you're obviously like a super, you know, connector and found your way through even landing here as a 10th grader, right? But what about the kids who are a little more shy or a little bit more reserved or don't feel like it's okay to ask for help? What do you think would be helpful there?
I think I used to be that kid, definitely. There was a point where, you know, as much as a counselor or maybe a mentor figure for me would throw resources at me, I'd be like, I don't really need that.
Yeah.
I think one thing that changed was definitely just getting more involved. I started volunteering a lot towards like my junior year of high school. So I think, you know, having those opportunities for, you know, to help students be more involved in the community. I know we have like rec centers, but maybe something that, you know, you can build towards. I know we have volunteering at plant nurseries. I used to do that. Or, you know, removing invasive plants from a park. I think
Eco Action's gonna love you for saying that.
I think just getting students to be involved more in that aspect of serving the community, that's where you kind of lose that fear of, oh, I don't really trust this resource, or I don't really feel comfortable opening up about my mental health to this person who's, you know, there. But I think that's a good approach we could take. Also, maybe just clubs. I know reaching out to clubs at schools would also be a good way to do it. You know, just because clubs, it's also more of a friendly environment. You're with other teens as well. And when you do it as a group, it's less intimidating. So I think those are two ways we could get that.
I think that's great. And I think we've learned a lot about how just connection and belonging and purpose, you know, something to do, whether it's crocheting or just talking to an older person who's feeling lonely, that in itself is like mental health support. You know, it doesn't have to be a counselor all the time. Like there are times when that's needed, but just feeling that connection. I remember there was a young woman who came and spoke to us at the county board last April, I think, when we were talking about mental health and particularly about addiction and sort of supportive recovery. And she had lost a cousin, I believe, to the fentanyl crisis, to an overdose. And she said that when he was getting addicted, he described it as the feeling of using was like getting a hug from grandma. And that has just always stuck with me, is like, that's exactly it. It's like we all want a hug from grandma, you know, or like a puppy or something like that. And if we don't create spaces in our community where that can happen, in really healthy ways, then all kinds of people look for other ways. That's across generations and millennia that has happened.
It's interesting because I also was thinking about this social media, digital citizenship, and I also think about unstructured time. And when we think about this teen mental health crisis, there's a lot of good research that talks about generationally how we have reduced the opportunities for young people to have unstructured, unsupervised time, right? For fear of something. And we live in a place where, we do have places and spaces for kids to be able to go and congregate. Do you believe that we have enough? Or do you believe that there's something that we are not thinking about in terms of unstructured, unsupervised, safe places for kids to go that look different than just community centers, right?
I think that we live in in my experience, we live in a very safe community. There wasn't a moment where I might have been maybe afraid to go out with friends in certain areas. I know that the county offers so many options, like recreation, like Arlington Mill or Barcroft, for teens to, unwind with their friends. But also, I might suggest maybe, I don't know, I know there's like public transportation options for teens, like the card specifically, maybe making that an option as well, or like encouraging teens to get their public transportation so they can get to these points, maybe like the mall in Crystal City or maybe Ballston, so encouraging and, letting them know that there are these resources, for them to hang out over the summer would also help in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think since you graduated, there's been a real push and takeoff, and it's like you said, like if your friend is now used to using the bus, then you're going to ride along with them, and it kind of spreads like wildfire. It's free, and then but even after we made it free and sort of pushed it through the schools, we saw it was pretty uneven, the uptake. And so when we did our last transportation strategy, we looked at what's going on, like this school, fewer kids are using it, and like, it's totally amazing brain science that you're like, oh, because there's not a bus stop there or whatever. So, we really did some good work to connect all the rec centers, and almost all the rec centers, I'll come back to that, the libraries and the schools, at least the middle and high schools, so that kids can go places. And the unfortunate exception is Long Bridge Aquatic Center, which is still not fully connected. And we had a lively conversation during budget season this year about what it would take to connect it, and we're working towards it, but we couldn't quite come up with the million plus for this year. So.
Well, shout out to Diane Kresh, who is the head of libraries, because I think she does remarkable things at the library, for the library system. And obviously I was in high school last year, right? I obviously graduated last year. You guys were classmates. Right? We were, I just took a different path.
It's all good.
No, but when I was younger, I do remember that we would go to the library, and the library would even be a hangout space. And I was excited to see just this past May that you start to see more young people coming back to the library, which is one of these unsupervised, unstructured places to be. And I wonder how your experience, maybe with the library system, or if some other kind of county service,
or just a coffee shop, a bench or whatever,
a whatever, something that is being provided to young people that maybe some of those that have been around the block a little bit aren't thinking about, and I do think about these downtimes, being bored, like those are perfect things for adolescent development, right? Connection to nature and imagination, right? So where are the places and spaces that you think, not just you, because as Susan said, you're very connected, but maybe some of the people who you know in your circle who may not be, but you know that they use them?
Well, I definitely hang out in the Shirlington Library. That's my favorite spot.
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, and it's just like the area as well. It's like you can go eat, you can just walk around, and it's beautiful. I love that space. I know, I definitely hang out at the library. I'm not sure about my friends so much, but I know that it's usually like commercial centers,
Yes.
so like the malls, or Arlington would also be a good spot, or Ballston. Those are usually the hot spots.
Where there's food.
Where there's food, definitely where there's food. So also one thing that's important about that is that it's, free.
Yes.
Because as teens, you don't really have access to that much money. So I would say the libraries has been one of the greatest resources for me. Not only for that, but just someone who's involved in the community. You definitely there's so many opportunities to do outreach for different things at the library, which is great. And yeah, that's really all I think I can think about at the moment. I know my friends play basketball at Arlington Mill. That's a good spot as well. Barcroft is also really popular for sports.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Are you giving a 10 out of 10 for our amenities?
yes, definitely.
Yes. Well, good. Well, anything else you wanted to hit from the court side or from the services side?
Yeah, I know for SIFA we have a youth advisory board that we try to bring young people in to have a conversation with us to elevate these issues so that they can get to the county board and say, hey, this is what young people are saying, this is what they're experiencing, this is what they're wanting. Did you feel, what they're wanting, do we feel like there's enough spaces in Arlington for young people to do that?
There's definitely a lot of spaces for young people to, voice their opinion, this being an example of that. I haven't particularly been on the advocacy side of it, but I know we have is it the Teen Network, Teen Council? I know that the county as a whole is really doing a good job at paying attention to what teens are saying. And at schools as well, you also have a place to form to say your opinions, things that the county could improve on. I would say maybe aside for improvement would probably be maybe making space for teens to, be part. I'm not sure actually about this. This is kind of just an idea I had. But maybe county meetings, maybe teens, or specifically advertise that for them as an option to, give their opinions.
Come and share.
Different, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I know there's lots of Oreos to eat and fried things.
One more question. I know that we said that there's a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities that are being provided by the county, by the community. What do you think are the barriers for kids getting there? Because there's this thought that maybe not enough kids are showing up to the programs, the opportunities.
Yes. I can definitely see why that happens. Maybe this isn't so much a barrier during the summer, but during school season, specifically me, I felt like I had no free time. So I'm not sure if that has to do with course load or just, maybe extracurriculars taking up that time. But just making sure that, teens, this kind of has to do more with schools, but making sure that they have that space for free time. Making sure that these events, maybe are offered on weekends or on times when they won't be doing something related to school. Some teams also have jobs, which is, they might need that for themselves or to help support their families. So, making the schedule kind of flexible for that and making sure that, teens have access to that regardless of other things they might be doing would definitely help.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and I'll look forward to hearing more about your experience at George Mason, another one of our local institutions that we care deeply about.
Thank you guys for listening and for working so hard for us.
Absolutely.